Well, thank you very much, Luca. And let me just say good morning to everyone. Thank you for being with us so early today on the second week of COP. And I just want to say how pleased I am to be speaking here today at the launch of our Climate Resilience for Energy report, and to be joined by Ambassador Catherine Stewart, the Ambassador for Climate Change for the Government of Canada. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. And on behalf of all of us at the IEA, I'd really like to thank the International Atomic Energy Agency for co-organizing the event with us. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank the members of the IEA Consultation Group on Climate Resilience for Energy Security for all of their great support and insightful comments in the development of this report. I'm really glad to see some of you in the audience here today, and I know we're all looking forward to discussing our next steps towards climate resilient future for energy systems. So, despite the recent progress in clean energy transitions, climate change is already putting global energy security at risk, which I think is quite evident. This year, as you all know, we've already seen some really major climate-driven disruptions in the energy sector. These include heat waves across Europe, which raised electricity prices to a record-breaking level with soaring energy demand for cooling. And in addition, the recent Category 4 hurricane, Ian, which destroyed electricity networks in the United States and Cuba, and even reached Canada, as I recall, if I recall correctly, leaving over 13 million people in the dark. And massive floods from record monsoon rains and glacial melt in Pakistan damaged power stations and gas pipelines. And severe droughts in Chile and flooding in South Africa disrupted the global supply of copper and cobalt, which are critical for energy systems. So really, the climate events have wreaked havoc all around the world. And there really is no single continent that's been immune to climate change consequences. And these impacts are more than likely to grow in the coming decades. So, although limiting global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius would substantially reduce the adverse impacts of climate change, it won't eliminate them all. And intensifying tropical cyclones, wildfires, and increasing precipitation with heavy rainfall and floods will become visible and trigger critical impacts to energy systems. They can damage assets, disrupt fuel and resources supply, and trigger massive scale power outages, as we've already seen. If global warming exceeds 4 degrees Celsius, energy systems will face more severe climate change impacts, such as permafrost thawing, intense droughts, and sea level rise. And all of these impacts will threaten reliable production of fuel and minerals, and significantly interrupt power generation from thermal and hydropower plants in particular. So building climate resilience is a really important and effective solution for sustainable energy. And climate resilience energy systems support a rapid deployment of renewable energy technologies that are sensitive to climate conditions. They also contribute to energy security, providing more reliable, secure, and robust energy services. And to build climate resilience, actions from all energy stakeholders is needed. Not only energy suppliers, but also public authorities and energy consumers should be aware of climate impacts on energy and take appropriate measures. However, climate change adaptation and resilience have received significantly less attention than mitigation in the energy sector. And so to address such challenges, the IEA has been closely working with governments, energy companies, and international organizations for many years on the implications of climate change on the energy systems. So the IEA has been committed to helping policymakers and stakeholders around the world consider climate resilience in their long-term planning and investment decisions. And this report on climate resilience for energy security shows our efforts to provide a comprehensive picture of how climate change will affect energy supply and demand, and how resilient energy systems could contribute to addressing such challenges. So we really hope that this publication will be not only a helpful reference point for everyone who is seeking a better understanding of the connections between climate change and energy security, but really shine a much brighter light on this set of challenges and what can be done about them. So again, on behalf of all my colleagues at the IEA, I'd like to express our deep appreciation to the members of the consultation group, including IEA, which, as I said, is co-organizing the event. And once again, thank you so much for your commitment to this important topic and for all of you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. We're very grateful for these excellent opening remarks, and I would like to invite Ambassador Catherine Sear to provide her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the IEA and the IAEA for organizing this event and for inviting me here to speak. Delighted to speak about your timely report on climate resilience and energy security. And as Mary has mentioned, recent events around the world, including the heat waves, droughts, forest fires, extreme storms, have certainly raised the awareness of the devastation wrought by climate change. They also laid bare the implications for the global energy systems that people and businesses around the world depend on every day. In fact, climate change has had a significant impact across the entire energy supply chain, including fuel production, mining, power generation, electricity grids, and the resilience of energy infrastructure. Simply put, climate change is putting global energy security at risk, and in the coming decades, the impact on energy is likely to grow. Unabated emissions will trigger even more adverse impacts on global energy systems. And at the same time, Russia's unjustified invasion of Ukraine has further exposed the vulnerability of global energy markets and impacted these supply chains for many other commodities and industries. Canada, along with 120 other countries, have committed to net zero. And we understand that the pathway to this future will require an unprecedented transformation of how energy is produced and used. We need to swiftly and affordably reduce emissions from sectors that are very difficult to decarbonize, including air travel, agriculture, transportation, and power generation. Ultimately, we need to replace more and more fossil fuel generated electricity with non-emitting energy technologies. But as this report shows, our energy systems also need to be resilient against the increasing impacts of climate change to be truly secure. A climate-resilient energy system, one that can anticipate, absorb, and accommodate and recover from climate hazards, can prevent negative effects from spreading across the energy value chain, and this resilience will actually bring more benefits than costs. As the IEA report points out, simple changes such as replacing electrical transmission and distribution infrastructure components with more resilient materials and components could eliminate about 80% of climate change costs. A recent study by the Canada Climate Institute also shows that for every dollar spent on adaptation measures, $13 to $15 will be returned in years ahead in direct and indirect benefits. Adaptation is action that reduces the negative impacts of climate change, actions like building seawalls and strengthening bridges and hydro lines, and clearly adaptation pays off, and that's why Canada has made resilience a priority. Our country is now coming forward with a national adaptation strategy. We see this as a critical opportunity for Canada to strengthen our efforts for climate change and to seize those benefits. The strategy focuses on actions to increase resiliency across the country, build and maintain infrastructure, protect the environment, and reduce the risks of climate-related disasters. We've also made targeted investments to help us adapt to the impacts of climate change, from local actions to modernize energy systems in remote communities to system-wide changes that will build resilience in our energy systems. And I'll give you some examples. We know we need more reliable and non-emitting energy sources to power grids. Canada is already ahead in this regard. Our power grid is almost 85% non-emitting, and we're aiming to get to 90% non-emitting power by 2030 and net zero grid by 2035. To achieve these ambitious goals while maintaining the reliability that Canadians expect, we know there's work to be done. Our grids must be able to accommodate more variable renewable energy sources and withstand climate-induced disruptions. That's why Canada's invested more than $1.5 billion in a smart grid renewable electrification program designed to increase our grid's renewable capacity, improve its reliability and resiliency, and bring cleaner, more reliable electricity to Canadians. We're also investing $63 million in flood mapping and hazard identification program in partnership with our provincial and territorial governments. The program aims to complete flood hazard maps of risk areas in Canada and make this flood hazard information accessible. This past March, Canada also reaffirmed its support for the IEA's Clean Energy Transitions Program by signing on to the joint commitment and pledging a financial contribution of $8 million over the next 4 years. Collaboration is key, and because climate change and global energy systems are so interconnected, all levels of government, the private sector, energy suppliers, energy consumers have a critical role to play in fighting in the long term. We must continue to bring stakeholders together to integrate resilience into future climate actions as our energy transitions transform, to bring about a future where climate security is energy security. Learning from each other as we are today is a really great place to start. So with that, let me thank the IEA again for this report and for continuing to provide the most advanced energy policy there is. Thank you. Policy advice.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And it's very remarkable to hear that this is an important topic for Canada, and also that Canada is at the forefront in addressing climate change and resilience for the energy sector. I would like to invite now my colleague Jin-Sun Lin, who is an energy and environment policy analyst at the IEA, and is the lead author of the report that is being released today. She will provide an overview of the key messages that come from the report. Thanks very much, Jin-Sun. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luca. So could you show the presentation file? Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to share our report called Climate Resilience for Energy Security at the IEA Pavilion during the COP27. These reports aim to be a reference point and comprehensive overview about the climate change and also their impact on the energy systems, not only about the supply, but also about the demand patterns and what kind of measures we can take to enhance the climate resilience. So there are many questions when we started this project to address. So the first questions we wanted to address is how does climate change affect and will affect energy security? And where will be the most critical climate hazard will happen, and which part of the energy systems will be the most vulnerable and also exposed to such kind of threat. And then, of course, we wanted to discuss how we can address those kind of risks with the necessary measures from different stakeholders, and also how climate change will affect energy demand in key end-user sectors such as buildings, industries, and transport. So this one shows the graph of the climate change in terms of the global warming. So as you can see, the climate change is putting global energy security at risk. So these kind of increasing of the global mean surface temperature, as you can see on the left, and also increasing the number of the days with the maximum temperature above 35 degrees, which is very closely related to the heat waves. They are all increasing in most of the scenarios, unless we address the changes up to 2 degrees. So more frequent and longer heat waves are likely to affect power generation efficiency, cooling water temperature for the thermal power plants, and also early onset of snow melt and permafrost thaw, which will affect the fuel transport infrastructure and hydropower generation significantly. And also, it is very closely related to the higher wildfire risks if it is combined together with the droughts. This will affect oil and gas production and electricity networks. And we are likely to experience longer summer, which will also critically affect energy demand for cooling. This one also shows an interesting key points that the climate impact will geographically vary significantly. So we are showing the two different scenarios. Left one is under the 2-degree scenario, and the right one is above 4-degree scenario. And you can see the changes in precipitation will show significant regional differences and also the gap between the two different scenarios. You can see that some of the parts of the North Africa, Mediterranean parts are likely to experience a huge decrease in terms of the precipitation. But some parts of the Asia, South Asia, or Southeast Asia, they are likely to experience some increase in their precipitation. So this is a kind of table that we would like to show that how the climate change affects the energy systems. So this shows that unabated emissions trigger more adverse impacts on energy supply. As you can see, the check mark indicates the significant climate risk in both low and high emission scenarios. So check marks are very likely to happen until the end of this century. But the exclamation mark, which shows that only it will be significant and critical under the high emission scenario, which means that we can avoid these kind of risks if we mitigate global greenhouse gas emissions on time. I would like to show a little bit more detailed picture of this one. So now you can see the low emission scenario. So climate change risks to power plants and electricity grids. You can see that many green dots or yellow dots. But if we go to the high emission scenario path, you can see that there are many red dots, orange dots, which means that it will be significantly risky, particularly in terms of the precipitation, dry and wet, and also the temperature-wise, they are likely to increase a lot of impacts. I would like to show one example, particularly about the temperature. So now you can see the graph of the power plants that how they will experience a difference passing their pathway. So you can see on the left, the 3 columns are related to the low emission scenario. We are likely to see a limited level of the increase in the maximum temperature above 35 degrees. But on the right side, you can see the above 4-degree scenario. They are likely to huge increase in terms of this one. And we are showing 4 different type of power plants. So solar PV and nuclear and gas. They are all likely to experience almost similar path, and also the electricity network as well. We also look at the fuels and resources sector as well. So as you can see, the refineries, coal mines, nickel, cobalt, lithium, copper, particularly the last 4 different critical minerals are key technologies, key resources for the clean energy transition, particularly for EV, wind power plants, and batteries. And you can see there are many green dots, but in a high emission scenario, you can see that there are more yellow and orange and red dots there. I would like to introduce 2 very interesting examples. So critical mining is very likely to be affected by the level of the precipitation and water availability. For example, lithium mining is particularly exposed to the climate change impacts that could make major production areas drier. So although the level of actually water use for the lithium mining is higher for any other minerals, but over 50% of lithium production is currently concentrated in the areas which are likely to get drier due to the climate change. In terms of the number, the climate change is projected to make lithium mining areas drier in the future. In high emission scenario, more than 20% of lithium mines are projected to experience a moderately or significantly drier climate in 2080 to 2100. Even a low emission scenario, some of the parts of the mines are likely to face some slightly drier climate. But for the nickel mining, it's totally also the different picture. So as you can see, there are many blue colors, which means more precipitation in those regions. So some other reasons climate change could lead to a wetter climate, increasing the possibility of mineral production disruptions due to heavy rainfall and flooding. And severe flooding can halt the electricity supply for the mining, and also they can affect the mine sites and waste storage and tailing of dam failures, and also extensive environmental damages as well. This one shows the impacts on the energy demand patterns. Although the energy demand are critically affected by climate change, but the most significant sector is building sector. So as you can see that there will be a huge increase in the cooling energy demand, while the heating energy demand are likely to decrease. To address such kind of climate change impacts, we need to think about 4 different parts of the climate resilience. Climate resilience, by definition of the IEA, consists of 4 different parts. The first one is readiness, and the second one is robustness, and third one is resourcefulness, and fourth one is recovery. So readiness and robustness are more related to the long-term planning, and also the resourcefulness, how you can address the short-term disruptions and outage, how you can recover from those kind of damages and minimize the size of the damage. So we would like to provide some tailored measures for each type of stakeholders. So we are suggesting different measures for supply side, demand side, and authorities and governments for the 4 different steps of the climate resilience. So as you can see, the energy suppliers need to conduct climate risk and impact assessment and implement a physical system improvement and switch to water efficient and heat resilient production process and diversify energy supply chain while providing better monitoring system for early warning and emergency response. Also, energy consumers like us, we need to do some kind of measures to increase the climate resilience. First, we need to ensure the climate proofing in design and performance of the energy demand sectors, and also increase awareness and promote behavior changes. And improving energy efficiency. Also, we can use smart and advanced technologies for better management and adopt nature-based solutions and switch to climate-resilient materials. Governments and authorities will have a critical role to enhance those kind of climate resilience measures and promote and encourage energy consumers and suppliers to adopt such measures. First of all, they can enhance knowledge about the climate risks and impacts and establish appropriate policy framework while mainstreaming climate resilience into relevant regulations. And also, we need to mobilize financing and investments. Sometimes private financing is not really mobilized without any kind of public support. And also support adequate climate insurance and also ensure emergency preparedness as well. One of the key questions we are always receiving is whether it will be cost effective or not. So we tried to conduct some case study with the cost benefit analysis for the Africa and Asia power sector against the flooding only. So as you can see, only with the limited part of it and only with the limited climate hazard only, flooding only, you can see that it's already cost effective. So when we are imagining other type of the climate hazard we are already facing, such as heat waves and more intense tropical cyclones and others, we can expect the benefits from the climate resilience measure implementation will be larger. Thank you very much, and our report is online currently on the IEA webpage. Please visit our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jinsun. This was an excellent overview, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased as one of the authors of the report, but I really think it really brings a big, one of the first comprehensive overview of climate resilience in the energy sector. We've seen there are some impacts on the supply side, some impacts on the demand side, and it's quite a complex issue, and an issue that actually has been not studied so much yet, but we are quite lucky today to have in this fantastic panel experts from different organizations that have actually dedicated their part of their careers in studying the effect of climate resilience. So with this, I would like to segue a little bit to the second part of this event, which is a panel discussion. I would like to introduce first the speakers in the panel, and then we're going to go into the discussion. So first, to my right, Marta Martinez Sanchez, who is the Director of Climate Change at Iberdrola and also a good friend of mine. Then we have here Roberta Boscolo, who is the Climate and Energy Scientific Officer at the World Meteorological Organization, WMO. Then here to my left, we have Marcelino, Dr. Marcelino Madrigal Martinez, welcome, who is the head of energy division of the Inter-American Development Bank. And then to my left, Mrs. Brianna Lazarevitz, who is an energy economist at the International Atomic Energy Agency. So thanks very much all of you for being here today. I would like to start from Marta. Asking you if you can give us a little bit some insight from the private sector perspective from Iberdrola. So please.
Thank you, Luca, and thank you to the agency for organizing this panel and for the report, and congratulations on the launch. We participated in the discussions on the peer review, so I'm not biased either. Anyway, so I wanted to start this intervention, and it's been said already, but really stressing the need for global macroeconomic resilience. So I'll touch a little bit on that. And we're seeing how climate change is accelerating and events are intensifying. And so this is putting us closer. We really want to avoid those high scenarios. And the way to avoid that and to make sure that we're as far from them as possible is by really accelerating mitigation action. So I think that this is key for overall resilience, and in particular in the energy sector, we have that responsibility to accelerate our transition to renewables and efficiency-based energy model. And this is the way to really get us out of those risks and achieve also as a key, let's say, input to many economic sectors. The energy sector is also resilience for the overall, let's say, economy-wide resilience to cope with these effects. There's also, by doing this transition, we're diversifying our energy sources, we're achieving a more affordable energy and more secure. So again, this then leads on to more, let's say, resilience at the economic-wide level. And not only that, but I think it's pointed out in the report, there is solutions and options that are already there for the energy sector to take on, and these are proven and they are readily available. So basically, to increase resilience, number one is let's accelerate mitigation. We'll have lower damages, lower adaptation needs. We further away from the adaptation limit, having also better economy-wide resiliency, and also we can lower some stress and some pressures in specific resources. I'm thinking of the nexus, energy, water there, so there's also benefits there. But then again, we cannot do this we have to be resilient in ourselves, so to say our infrastructures, they have to embed our own resiliency and be hand in hand. Mitigation and adaptation, they have to come together and be complementary and be coordinated. And so we're working in the energy sector, we're working across a number of fields to identify specific actions that will then have benefits in all those 4 phases that are included in the report. So readiness, robustness, resourcefulness, and recovery. And this means knowledge. It means working also on technological or technical specifications, on applying or combining technologies, on looking at processes, new ways of doing things. I think in the energy sector, it's by nature, it's exposed to climate hazards. So there's already capacity and skills and knowledge in the companies to manage those risks and a way of thinking. It's true that then climate change will add new risks or compound effects or more intense and more frequent, let's say, events. and also expanded geographical areas. No, so we will see hazards in areas where we never had them before. But I think that by integrating this climate change into the way of working, I mean that's what we're gradually doing in companies, and I think everywhere. And just to give you some examples, digitization, that's a key thing to include, to add an intelligence layer to assets. And we had a very specific and very intense extreme event in Spain, in the center of Spain. It was early 2020, so a very heavy snow. I think it was like a return period of 100 years. So the biggest snow in the last 100 years. Maybe in Canada probably would have been easy to manage, but for us it was a bit unexpected. And we managed with this intelligence level in the assets and digitization and automation, we did manage to recover or to get back, back to functioning 70% of all the failures in 30 minutes. So that's one area where same thing with that. We have Danas in the east of Spain. Also, there's heavy precipitation in September, and also with automation, we are managing to get back to service a lot quicker. Also working on readiness, so anticipating the emergency, and so we're also increasing our systems this is the case of, I'm thinking of Meteoflow. It's a system that was created to forecast renewable energy production, but we're adding forecasting of specific critical situations with high humidity, low temperatures that can really pose specific, events to the assets, and trying to anticipate that and launch that signals to the let's say to the operation and maintenance teams so that they can prepare for that in advance. We're working also knowledge, as I said, and Roberta will then touch upon that a lot more. Working also on new technologies and how to combine battery storage in the grid and how to use that to make sure that we have more resilience in specific areas of the field. So I can leave it here. Maybe we can touch later.
Thanks very much, Marta. If I may attempt to summarize a little bit, 3 points. The first is to accelerate mitigation. The second is that capacity is already there in companies to address both the acceleration, mitigation, and adaptation. And the third is the integration of adaptation into the planning that is partly already there, but we have to do more. So thanks very much for these initial remarks. I would like now to turn to Dr. Marcelino Madrigal for your first introductory remarks, and perhaps if you can give us the perspective of Development Bank in terms of resilience. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and first of all, congratulations to the IEA for the release of the report, and thanks for allowing us to be part of the commentators of the report. I think is definitely a good piece of knowledge to help us understand how we need to prepare for resiliency, to finance it, and the idea of my brief remarks is to show you what is the reality now in Latin America. I'm going to show you how climate change is impacting Latin America energy infrastructure and how we are helping our clients dealing with it. And just to put some numbers, in the Caribbean only, in the last 9 years we had 330 storms, 330, of which 23 were Category 5 hurricanes, 23 Category 5 hurricanes. We have put the numbers together, and of course, resiliency pays. We analyze the whole power grids of the Caribbean, and if we improve resiliency, we can save close to $4 billion just investing from 20 to 40% extra cost on resiliency measures. And this is only on the Caribbean. Why we did that? Because this is happening every year, at least once or twice, in different islands of the Caribbean. And this is how we're helping our clients, getting ready with readiness, robustness, and resourcefulness. And this is the case of Hurricane Dorian in Bahamas, which basically destroyed a couple of the islands. There were $2 billion in losses, $200 million in losses in the power infrastructure. So how do you deal with that? You need to have some sort of readiness instruments to deal with this kind of events. And this is why we at the IDB have deployed contingency financing that is ready to be disbursed when these types of storms reach to a certain level of destruction. So in the case of Bahamas, we deployed those types of contingency resources to quickly help rebuild some critical infrastructure. But those types of funds, they are usually not enough. You still need to have additional finance to recover the destruction in the grid. And on the right side, you see the actual pictures of the new infrastructure, which is more resilient. We're helping rebuild in the case of the Bahamas. And this is blending finance from the IDB, from the European Union. So definitely having the finance is critical to quickly rebuild after hurricanes. Because some infrastructure, you can make it more resilient, and some other will just be destroyed. I just need to be ready to rebuild quick and fast. Another example, we continue incorporating resiliency in our designs of the projects we support in the Caribbean. This is the case of Central America. ETA, IOTA hurricanes hit Nicaragua, one after the other. You see the destruction on the left, and you see the result of a more resilient distributed generation facility that we designed for Nicaragua. So we just had to finance 5% extra cost on better anchoring that solar facility, and 10% more to find a better site that will not be flooded during the hurricane. So 15% extra cost led to a facility that was not destroyed after the hurricane. However, you need the technical capacity, the knowledge to be ready for that kind of design. And I really think it's important to have all that knowledge readily available of what you need to do in specific circumstances to your infrastructure to be ready to withstand this type of events. We're doing the same with hydropower infrastructure. Digitalization is key to manage more variable inflows of water. That's an actual picture of El Cajon, a hydropower plant we are helping rehabilitate in Honduras that had to manage unexpected inflows of water, and thankfully it was able to manage those very well, thanks to more digitalization that helps hydropower stations be ready to manage more variability. In conclusion, I think definitely the challenge is planning, financing, and ensuring technical capacity, understanding how exactly we need to reinforce infrastructure, what infrastructure can be reinforced, which one will have to be rebuilt because it will be destroyed. How to finance is not easy. Financing needs to come from different sources. Electricity rates cannot finance resiliency. Some cases, putting all the infrastructure underground means a 40% increase in the electricity rate, which is, of course, not viable in many circumstances. So definitely there is still a lot of room to learn instead of technical capacity, financing instruments, and planning for resiliency. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview on how Latin America and the Caribbean is coping with this new reality that we need to better prepare, finance, and recover after more frequent natural disasters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marcelino. I think it was really an excellent overview. If I can again provide perhaps a couple of points of reflection from what I taken out. The first is that the need for capacity, for technical capacity to reinforce that, especially on how to reinforce infrastructure, and also that financing for adaptation is quite difficult to do. Perhaps we can get back to that later on. Moving on now, I would like to invite Roberta Boscolo from WMO to provide a few thoughts about climate impacts and the resilience of the energy infrastructure. We know that you published an excellent report very recently, so if you can please give us a few thoughts about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Luca, and thank you, IEA, for this invitation, and congratulations for the report, which I find extremely important and timely, especially because, can you... So, yes, thank you. So WMO stands ready to help the implementation of the recommendation of this report, especially for what comes to raising awareness and specific data, climate data information for building resilience. So I'm starting with these slides and say that in terms of raising resilience, WMO publish every year the state of the global climate, and we already produced the preliminary report for 2022, and we know that things are not getting better. Actually, every year is scarier and scarier. We can see that temperature is rising, sea level is rising, glaciers are melting, and temperature and ocean temperature are rising. So all these variables, as explicitly discussed during the report of the IEA report, are affecting the energy sector. And so we need to have climate data if we want to build resilience, climate data of the future scenarios, not just looking on the past, but we need data of the future. And this kind of data, of course, are not building, are not helping decision on resilience of the energy sector. Is just a generic raising awareness. And what I would like to explain here is that when it comes to take decisions on infrastructures and planning for the future, we really need data which is highly localized and specific data that support decisions. And this is what we call it in WMO, climate services, weather and climate services for energy. And this involved really the co-production of these products and knowledge to different on the different value chain of the production of these products. So it's how we translate the general knowledge of climate change to be really specific to solutions, to building, planning resilience for the specific sector. So we need to involve who needs to know the information, and also we need to together find the solution for which kind of data need to be used for specific actions. And I try to summarize in these slides all the different steps that we need to do. I mean, I'm talking about what Marta also was referring to, specific tools like impact-based forecast, for example, for specific location of specific infrastructure. And also how important is to use climate data to really evaluate the action that we take. And so improving, you know, it is a cycle, it is not a chain. It has to be something that we continue to evaluate and improve. So when it comes to, as I said, to specific outcomes, we need really to contextualize the climate information and integrate a lot of other factors that affect the infrastructure and the energy systems. And this is really data that guide decisions, and decisions like we call it the 3 R's, no? The reinforce, rebond, relocate, restrict, or rebuild the infrastructure. And the other point that I want to make is that not everyone has the same information and interpret the information at the same way. So capacity building is another key aspect for building resilience. We need to be able to provide access to data, climate data, to everyone, everywhere in the world. And provide tools and accessibility to information to develop these analytics and for action everywhere. So this is, for example, some work that the WMO has done with the with the Green Climate Fund to support projects, especially in developing countries, and to help them to plan for the future energy and to help them to mobilize finance and resources for their energy development and the country development. So here is a platform for climate information and also another tool that we call it ClimPact, which is a statistical tool to calculate context-specific climate indicators for high-impact events and indicators. So I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Again, perhaps very quickly trying to summarize perhaps 3 key takeaways. The first is that we need climate data, not only for the past, but also for the future. The second is that we need to contextualize that data for the specific projects and the specific resilience types. And the third is that to do that, we need to build capacity, right? Thanks very much for this, and now hand it over to Brianna Lazarevitz to provide the perspective of the IEA, especially on the nuclear energy. It would be great to hear your insight. Thanks very much.
Hi everyone, thank you. Thanks. My name is Brianna Lazarevitz. I work in the Planning and Economic Studies section, and so today I'd like to just I'm following all of our other speakers talking about the importance of data and about compound risk. I'd like to highlight some analysis that my team recently worked on that contributed to the IEA report, all the acronyms, IEA report that's released today. So what we've done is take the agency's power reactor information system, so information that we have on nuclear reactors around the world, and pair this with very localized data from the IPCC to try and understand how nuclear infrastructure can be impacted by climate change, but also these compound risks. So things that will happen concurrently. Next slide, please, Craig. Thanks. So here, some of the risks that were mentioned by the IEA, but high winds, sea level rise, heat and aridity. These things are not going to happen in isolation. So what we've done is take a look at the climate data that IPCC has released for the future and pair this with information that we have on nuclear sites to try and understand those regional and really specific site differences that are going to occur. And our aim with this analysis that is outlined in our climate change and nuclear power report in much more detail is really to try and help our member states, help countries mitigate and adapt and try and understand the action that they need to take for the future. And just to highlight some priorities for action at the International Atomic Energy Agency, we help member states take a look at each of these parameters in isolation and combined and help them perform assessments and prepare operational measures, monitoring, and improve for the future the ways that they take a look at each of these challenges for the future. So with that, I'll pass it back and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brianna. And just again, a thought that the nuclear power is not immune to climate impacts, and actually there are many different type of impacts that could have an impact on the operations of the nuclear power plants. And so there are some recommendations from your report that could be very useful to take into account. So now we do have a little bit over 5 minutes to summarize. I would like to give each of the speakers perhaps 1 minute to address one specific question for Marta. Starting again from in the same order, what are the challenges of the private sector? We heard about it already, but also how Iberdrola has coped with climate change impact. If you can give us a couple of examples. Thanks.
Thank you, Luca. Well, some of the challenges have come up already. One of it is information and really turning all that climate information into decision-making information and really making that translation. I would also highlight the one area that's not here when you do the specific analysis is understanding your initial level of resiliency. So you have the climate data, you need to know your asset, and well, that can be hard and complex, especially if you're trying to analyze risk on a wider level, not specific cases maybe. Another challenge is the value of resiliency, and Marcelino pointed it out. It's not recognized enough, or in some areas that it can create distortions, but it also creates barriers to do more on resiliency. And then I think we need to keep on working on, this is a learning process. So we have the capacity in the energy sector, but we are really confronting also new risks and new variables. So it's a learning process, and we need to, I think, keep on working together to actually manage this and not duplicate efforts.
Thanks very much, Marta. And now turning to Marcelino, we heard before you said that financing for adaptation is not a simple issue. How can we overcome the main challenges? If you can give us ideas on what are the main challenges for financing adaptation, and if you can give us a couple of positive examples if you have them.
Thank you. And I show you the examples of the contingency facilities we deploy in the Bahamas and other countries. We are the IDB are deploying those instruments. Actually, you have deployed $2.6 billion on contingency finance for recovery after disasters. But that's not enough. It's not enough, so we need to collaborate more between different donors, financing agencies. And I think that starts if we raise more the awareness on what does it mean to be ready. Information is not even, technical capacities is not even. We should be having absolutely the plan for rebuilding power infrastructure on every island in the Caribbean, and the technical capacity, the financing for that upfront work is important, is really critical. So I think we need to start to put more emphasis on preparing and not only on responding. And that's where information is going to be critical, that we collaborate among each other to have that information at the fingertips of those who are being affected. And after a hurricane happens, every power utility in the world should have, this is my rebuild plan. And we don't have those for every single utility. So I think we need to collaborate more on the upfront planning work to identify those plans. And if we show the value of those plans, I'm pretty sure then the financing will come. So invest in preparation, I think, is key after we are doing already somehow on responding. So planning, focusing on the planning part would be critical.
Thanks very much, very, very insightful. Roberta, I would like to ask you, what do you think are the main challenges and the kind of mechanism that we can put in place to raise awareness? We heard that it's very important to raise awareness for a number of reasons, and so what do you think we could do?
Yeah, and I think I'm not saying anything new because all the intervention before, I mean, we are all converging, I think, in the same space. And there is the need certainly to use so the World Meteorological Organization, they issue information and early warnings and projection, but it's how we come together to develop solution and to develop preparedness measure based on this information. So the challenge to me is to create this space when we can all come together and discuss. We, climate information providers, don't have the perspective of the engineers and the energy industry. And we would like to know, as well as I think the energy industry would like to have more information on where the data are, how to use them, how to translate them for their solutions. So the challenge is create this space of co-creation, co-design and co-creation of knowledge. And I don't know if maybe the starting point could be to have pilot projects and community of practice and lesson learned, sorry, to help to to sensitize on this topic.
Thank you very much, Roberta. I'd just like to conclude with Brianna and asking from the point of view of an international organization, what can we do to help accelerating this process?
I mean, I think we've got some great ideas today. I think more panels like this, more communication. I think the role as an international organization is that cooperation, is that continued communication, sharing data wherever possible, sharing models, sharing best practices, so that everyone can work together. I mean, as an international organization, we have this overarching view that maybe a specific region or country doesn't have. We can expand and work together and achieve a common goal. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, and I think with that we are getting to a close for this panel. I would like just to summarize briefly with just one word, which is cooperation. We heard it from the ambassador at the beginning. We heard it many times in this panel. We need to work together. This is a complex topic. Sometimes it's not really at the forefront on the headers of the newspapers, but I think the more we collaborate, the more we can advance together, the more we can share data, the more we can share best practices, I think the better. So please join me in applause for our great panelists, and thanks very much, everyone.